My ancestral name is Tewanee Joseph. I'm from the Squamish Nation. My main sport is lacrosse, but I've had the fortunate opportunity to take those teachings and go and bring it into the business world, but also the political world and many others, and worked on the 2010 Olympic and Paralympic Winter Games. You know, the sport that I played growing up actually was passed down for me from my uncles and from my family, is the sport of lacrosse. And for us, that's really important sport because it's the creator's gift to all of us, and it really traces back to the Haudenosaunee. Although we had stickball games here on the coast, for me lacrosse was, I remember getting my first stick, wooden stick. It was a Mohawk lacrosse stick when I was 5 years old, going onto the side of the house and practicing, and then eventually playing on Friday nights when we were kind of 6 and 7 years old and 8. And Friday nights at the North Shore Indians home games were, to us, the heroes were the North Shore Indians Senior B lacrosse team. And for me, that's the sport that I took many teachings from, but also at the same time, I was able to meet and develop relationships, around the world. Sport for me is really about medicine. It's really about teachings. And in our culture, in the longhouse culture that we have on the coast for the Squamish people, we always learn from our elders and those that are older than us to be able to take those teachings and pass them on to our children and our children's children. So sport for me really is about life. And for me, it's something that I was able to transcend the sport itself, because especially lacrosse, it's bigger than just playing the game on the floor or in the field. It's actually about taking those teachings and applying them to your personal life. And for me, it actually led to the opportunity to lead the Foros First Nations, Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Lil'wat as the CEO for the Foros First Nations for the 2010 Olympic and Paralympic Winter Games in 2010. Playing the sport of lacrosse, for me, I had the opportunity to have many highlights in my life, and so winning 4 national championships in both box lacrosse and field lacrosse. But the moment that I remember most in sport and working on is, as a young person, I always wanted to be in the Olympic Games. And for me growing up, that was really the pinnacle of sport to me. But to work on the 2010 Olympic and Paralympic Winter Games was an incredible opportunity, not as an athlete, but as someone that would say Chin Chin Swai holds up the athletes, lifts them up. And to see the opening ceremonies where youth from First Nations, Inuit, and Métis from right across this country came out on the field of play in their own regalia and welcomed the athletes to the world in Vancouver in 2010 was a moment that I'll never forget in my life. And to see and meet some of those youth from those games that have gone on in their professional careers, their political careers, and their business lives, to remember those moments that it helped them as they started to move forward and be leaders, not only in their community, but across the world. And I think that's the moment I will never forget, as they came out on that field of play in their regalia, welcome the athletes of the world. The teachings from our elders has really been passed on, but it's really about respect for oneself and respect for one another. And I think anytime you do that, no matter what sport you play, respecting that sport and all that it has to offer you as a person is really important. And it's something that I really carried forward in my career in coaching, or also hosting and planning and staging and hosting World Games and many other games that I've worked on. It's that same reciprocal protocol of respect that becomes really important. And as you do that and you meet people around the world, those teachings actually carry forward and transcend no matter where you are as Indigenous peoples, but also with non-Indigenous peoples. And that's the one thing that I know that, when we talk about respect, it's also about inclusivity. It's about all people of all cultures. And that's something we were taught growing up. So that respect leads to many other things, respect for self and respect for others. The one thing is growing up, and transitioning from playing a sport like lacrosse to coaching. It takes many things. And one of the things that I learned, though, in terms of the teachings that I received from my elders, while I was playing the game is to have respect for the game. And that was important because, it wasn't just physically being able to perform, it was actually understanding what was happening, finding the rhythms within a game that allow you to either make the adjustments you need within periods or at halftime and such. And I think that's important because, I was fortunate enough to be able to be looked upon by our elders to be able to coach masters teams when I was younger. And so that was something that I was very surprised at in my 20s, that I was picked by older athletes in our community to help lead them on the floor, in terms of a coach. But one of the things that I learned in transitioning is that it can give you the greatest gift of joy when you're coaching athletes and they're able to take some of the things that you strategized and talked about and they implement on the floor. That was the biggest transition for me, was that I wasn't the one doing anymore, I was the one sharing. But to see those athletes go out on the floor and perform the way that they do at the highest levels that they do is one of the most rewarding things as a coach that I've ever been able to be a part of. That growth is important because when we talk about respect for self and others, to see others start to excel and you cheer for them, more than you cheer for yourself, is one of the things that's most important. But also it's incredible to see, the questions that get asked by athletes, but also the ability for them to grow, not only as an athlete, but as a person. And I think that's one of the things that I've learned about sport, is that, to have a clear vision, goals, objectives, relationships, and working with one another and making adjustments. Those teachings that I took from the sport of lacrosse and applied them to my life and my business life and my political career, as well as coaching, they're all applicable. And that's something I think anyone can take from any sport, is some of the teachings that they have there, and some of the leaders and coaches that they've had. Those became mentors in my life. The Indigenous Sports Gallery is really not only a showcase, but it's the voices and the images of those that have come before us, those that are here today, and helping inspire the future youth, Indigenous youth, and all youth across British Columbia, and I believe around the world, to become the best that they can be, not only in sport, but in life. And I think that's one of the things that's most important about the Indigenous Sports Gallery, is it represents so many other things than just sport. It's about these stories of individuals and their voices and their communities where they come from, but the strength and the pride that they have to be able to go out and perform, not only in their communities, not only in British Columbia, not only in Canada. Some of these athletes have performed right around the world, and those are the heroes that we have in our communities. But also for my children and their children, they're going to be able to see and hear these voices from so many people from so many places throughout British Columbia. If I had one thing I could share with the younger generation of athletes, is to really be able to go out there and put your best forward, but don't stand on the sidelines and wait. Do it. You never know. Sport is sometimes about success, but it's really about being able to go through the trials and tribulations of life. Sometimes you will be successful, sometimes you won't be as successful as you want it to be, but that's part of the learnings and the teaching. So I'd say to any young person coming up thinking about sport, or they're playing sports, go for it. If you want to go for the provincial team or the national team, do it. If you want to just take up a sport and you never tried it before, just do it. And I think if you're able to kind of go through a process where you're able to be on the field or be on the floor or be in the court and being able to share who you are as a person, those are the memories that will take you forward in life forever.
Yeah, Holly.